The crypto market continues some sideways trading, or the really technical term I use for it is boring. Boring is good though. It's generally when it's trending downwards and sideways after huge retracements, it can be a signal of a bottom. Today, we're going to get into some price analysis with Paul from DeFinity, who is joining us to look at the crypto markets, some other markets that affect crypto, as well as some of your altcoin picks. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel. I'm your host, Jay Rain. And if you like money in crypto and you're looking for a real investor's take on the crypto market, join the Rainmaker family by liking the video and subscribing with the all notifications bell enabled. Do note I'm not a financial advisor. I am a crypto investor myself, sharing with you how I think about the crypto market and specific cryptos I like. And I do own or plan to own most of what I talk about on this channel, though on Thursdays, we take viewer suggestions from the previous videos and bring them on. Special shout out to our Patreon members. We do have a private Discord there. Patreon members get access to. There is a link below to our Patreon if it's of interest to you. Now, at the beginning of the video, sometimes it says there's sponsored content on this. This is because of our strategic relationship with Chain, who have been very good to us, and they give us 500 won every month to give away to our audience, and we do that on Fridays in the live stream. So make it rain on that like button. Strap in for the show. Let's welcome Paul from DeFinity, who is joining us for some price analysis.
Hey guys, great to be here and looking forward to going through what you described as boring markets.
Yeah, this is the tough time, and you definitely feel it in the sentiment out there, right? And
yeah,
I do wish I had a magic crystal ball so that I could perfectly time everything, and I was caught off guard. I expected we could come down a little bit. I didn't expect to see Luna crash into flames. Bitcoin, I kind of expected it might go down again, but generally, I was hoping we would either have a bigger December or a bigger May, and neither of those two things is happening. That doesn't mean in a couple months it can't look a lot rosier, but it's making me be more patient than I want to be. And I'm like, oh, I hate it. Been patient for a long time in this market. And this is part of what weeds a lot of people out. And by weeding a lot of people out, that's why the gains are so big for those that stick around and stay strong. And now you're seeing why it's so hard and why so few people do it.
yes, absolutely. The markets are pretty much designed that way so that they inflict the most amount of pain on the most amount of people, I think, from what I've seen over the years. Just when you think you've got it all figured out, the market will do something that you don't expect. So one of the rules I have and one of the ways that I look at the markets is I always try to work out where I'm wrong in any strategy. So I start with a base strategy and think, okay, I think the markets will do X, Y, or Z. And then the next thing I think of is, well, what if I'm wrong? And I spent time teaching traders, and I would literally spend sort of a day out of like a 2-day course, for example, just telling people on the first day that this is what you needed to do. I'd go into the second day, and what amazed me was how it was so difficult to get that simple point across, that you have to have your, I mean, it depends on your form of analysis, your strategy, whether you're a long-term trader or investor, whether you're a short-term trader, but whatever you're doing, there has to be something. Even with Warren Buffett, who's a long-term buy and hold and wants to hold forever, there's something that triggers you out of the market. You might not like the management and get out because he sees something there. So there's always something that tells me or tells long-term investors that they're wrong. It gives them a clue as to where to get out. So where to get out is just as important as to where to get in. And so what I find can help people is that if you use technical analysis as well as everything else, it gives you another dimension. And sometimes when you're not emotionally tied to a market, you can give clearer views. And sometimes the simplest view is your first sort of reaction to what that chart is saying. Like if it looks like it's going down, then just try to follow that instinct that you've got. But the problem is, it is actually so very hard to also do that, especially once you know what the market is, and especially when all of that said, is quite difficult. But when you've got a position, it's times by 100, because of course then you're emotionally tied to that position as well. So for me, I mean, you mentioned Luna, and it's very unusual, but it's not impossible that things like that happen, and that's the problem. I would say, yeah, it's unusual for this to happen, but anything can happen. So the dollar can crash from here to zero for all we know, or it can double in value. I've seen these moves happen in the past, where things have gone from, well, let's take Bitcoin. It's gone from mere cents to thousands of dollars. If that in itself should tell you that the markets have no limits, and anything is possible. So so that's how I approach everything, with a state of uncertainty, but that's a good thing. In my experience of working in the city, where I find people get unstuck is when they're absolutely sure that something is definitely going to happen, and then they get into sort of an analysis blindness, I suppose, where they're not looking at any other form of analysis that's contrary to their view. I mean, even George Soros, who's regarded as one of the greatest investors and traders, would say that it was basically his back pain that would tell him when to get out of a position, because he would feel unconsciously uncomfortable, and that would make him think, I should get out of this position, and he learned to listen to it. So the moral of the story, as it were, is that unconsciously we know what's going on, but we kind of override that with our own sort
With our conscious self and desires.
Exactly, and that's again what makes, when you've gone through the technicals of the market, and you've kind of learned how to analyze the market, whether it's fundamental or technical. Everything becomes a bit like sports psychology, and a lot of trading books are very similar to sports psychology, because as we are seeing, it's exactly like that. The lows are always horrible and scary, and that's why these market sayings come in. Like Warren Buffett says, be greedy when other people are fearful, and be fearful when other people are greedy. It's for those reasons that we will see these big turning points when everybody's really, really scared. Now, how do you measure that? That's like hard to measure, but we look for certain signs that tell us that the market has gone too far. One of the ways is people like yourself, who are like the top experts at doing the analysis, start to jump in and say, look, these projects are really cheap, and the management is really good. And of course, everybody makes mistakes. Nobody can be held 100% accountable. Anybody who thinks that you've got to be 100% accountable for your views, it just doesn't understand markets, because we are all just dealing with uncertainty. But it's when long-term investors say, look, house prices are so cheap, I can buy this and rent it out. It cost me X and I can make Y. That's a deal. This coin management's great. I like the space they're in. This could develop. This is cheap. I'm going to jump in. Now, sometimes that's wrong. Okay, we all know that, and accept it. That's the risk of swimming in the sea. There can be problems, but there's also a lot of fun to be had as well. So I think it's at times like these, when the markets are like that, you have to get a little philosophical and sort of take a step back and look at your analysis. But that's also why I'd like to look at so many markets, and did so and do so as part of my job, because you also see something called sector rotation, which means, like, for the past 4 years, currency markets have been generally really boring. Like, not a lot has been going on, and because of that, nobody hedges their positions. Because nobody hedges their positions, nobody expects big moves. Lo and behold, we have big moves. So, so this is what's caught the FX market out. I think the funny thing, I mean, maybe it's not such a funny thing, but the thing about the cryptocurrency market is it's always volatile, and we have to deal with this, hyper vol market, and it's very hard. It's very hard at the best of times, but for new investors to deal with this sort of volatility is extremely difficult, and you have to have some form of strategy, and that starts with legging into positions with money that you can afford to lose, so you're not so emotionally tied to it, and accepting amongst the altcoins that there's a high degree of risk there, a very high degree of risk, because you don't get anything without a high risk means high return. And there's no way out of that. And for anyone who wants to do a bit more analysis, you can read about Long-Term Capital Management, which was a fund who thought that they'd got risk out of the market. They thought they'd got mathematical models that got rid of risk, and they created a fund that was making 400% in its first year, another 200% in its second year, and amazing in the third year, and then blew up. And it caused, and that was towards the end of the 90s. So, and it was one of the big steps when the Fed came in and started intervening in the market to help these big hedge fund players, because at that point, if that fund had gone down, it would have brought down potentially the financial system. So it was the sort of beginning of the way the Fed reacts. And talking of the Fed, we have spoken about what the Fed might do on this show, and a lot of when risk comes back in is linked to the dollar, which we'll look at, and it's also linked to the path for interest rates this year. So I was thinking that at the beginning of the year, the Fed would raise interest rates, but not by as much as they were expecting to raise, because if the markets go down, their reaction will be to start paring back their interest rate rises, because they have to do that, because they start to see the economy slow down. And that's the only lever they've got. They've got one lever, and they just sort of, either or foot on the gas, whichever analogy you want. So they've got to start sort of pumping more money or allowing for more money to go into the system now, because the equity markets are broadly still falling, and that will be their reaction. So the markets, even in the last week, have just started to really price in or pare back their expectations for interest rate rises this year. So this is why equity markets, and we can have a quick look at the S&P to show you that. This is why equity markets have kind of stopped and then had this sort of, okay, maybe rates are going to not go up as much, and that might be good. So it's had this sort of rebound, this first phase of the rebound, which happened very near of an extremely good Fibonacci target, which is at this 38.2% level, which is around 3,820 in the S&P 500. Now, this trend isn't over yet. Potentially there could be more downside there. So I've got a target around 3,500 to 3,600, and I'm not saying it will definitely go there, but it just feels like that there's a bit more in this correction to come, because it doesn't look like the dollar move is over, and it looks like interest rates could potentially still be going up. This is the chart of the 10-year yield, which we had a resistance point at 3.24%. But if you look at this chart and analyze it, it's like, well, this move here is not enough to say that yields have topped out. I mean, it's certainly a short-term top, and it's enough for a correction that might come back perhaps towards this 2.5% level, which was a big level on the way up. So it can correct a little bit more. I mean, obviously in percentage terms, from 3.24% to 2.5%, percentage terms of the percentage move is massive. But in market terms, it's not really, in price action terms here, it's not really that much. It's not enough to change the trajectory of this trend. So the big takeaway for now is that the dollar's still in the ascendancy. The markets are still in a kind of what we call a risk off mode, which means that the dollar has weakened because of that sense that interest rates might not be going up as fast as the market was expecting, and so they're kind of reevaluating that. But this is still not enough to say that the markets have properly turned and there's a big sea change. And again, I'll preface this, I could be wrong, right? So this could be the top of the dollar move, and it's going to crash from here, and cryptocurrencies and all risk-on assets now's the time to buy them. I mean, I'd say that the percentage chance of that is probably about 25 to 30%. So I'm giving it a low risk profile, but it's one that I'm wary of. So my core strategy for now is that there will be more corrections. I'm braced for more corrections, but I hope that I'm wrong, because if I am wrong and we're the start of a bigger move, there will be so much more upside that it won't really matter if we miss out on the first sort of phase of it, because there'll be plenty of time to join. So sorry, I've said quite a lot there. So I don't know if you wanted me to look at. I mean, I could continue with the Bitcoin chart if you want, or
Yeah,
we can
let's
discuss
jump
some.
into Bitcoin in just a second. I just want to share my thoughts.
Sure,
Um,
brilliant.
Part of how like my system to approaching the crypto market is that I buy when it's boring and then I'm just patient on it. This is why I don't use money that I can't afford to lose. It's why I don't trade on leverage, because though it sucks waiting through this low period, it's worth it because some people do cash out and they sell at lows and they take their losses and they leave. I found that I hold in there. And that doesn't mean there won't be a few more projects fall away and disappear into nothingness. This is a very high risk zone that happens, and some because of fraud, but a lot of times just poor management or mismanagement, or timing just didn't end up right, or it wasn't quite the right team to run it. So you're investing in early technology stuff. And so though you might buy low, sometimes it then goes lower and then even lower. But then you wait, or what I do is I wait till lots of money comes into the market. And I was hoping that December we might see that, because 4 years ago, and then 4 years prior to that, we saw a lot of money coming in the market in November, December timeframe. It looked like there might be a lengthening cycle. By early December, I realized, yeah, there's not enough momentum for it to happen this December. And so May, I was hoping that I did some calculations and it looked like May might be that. And we're not seeing it. We're almost near the end of May and we've seen nothing but a downtrend. And it doesn't really look like that sideways trading slash downtrend is over yet. And so I'm patiently waiting because I know that patience pays off. And though it sucks and it's hard, the rewards are gigantic. And it's as simple as this. I buy when people are running away from the market, which is now. And I sell when people are saying, oh my gosh, this will never stop going up, especially when I hear those words. Oh my gosh, this is just going to go up forever. Those words scare the crap out of me when I hear them and I'm in that. I'm like, okay, those are the words you always hear near the end. In fact, that's what I've been hearing for real estate for the last 2 years. And yeah, I retired and quit real estate about a year ago just because I didn't want to weather another downtrend, especially when I had something so juicy and so amazing like cryptocurrency that, I don't have to try to rent properties out in cryptocurrency. There's just so many less headaches. And so cryptocurrency got my full attention. And even though it's very volatile, this volatility brings profit into it. Now it's frustrating because with volatility, sometimes you think you're buying the bottom and it's not the bottom. And it goes down sometimes 80% from the low that you bought it at, which sucks. And Paul, one of the reasons I love Paul sharing his price analysis in here is because he's good at identifying when he's wrong on something and cashing out. So he doesn't take the full hit from that downturn. Me myself, I usually just leave it in there if I believe long term in that project, and then if I can, I buy more at the lower parts, buying in dollar cost averaging in, and then I wait for that project to get back in the news, at which point it usually has a big run up much higher than even where I bought in before, and then I'm highly in profits. But there are different ways people approach this depending on personalities, depending on interests, and definitely depending on skill level. And what's great is we have Paul that just has 30 years background in specifically this, not just in the crypto market, but in all these different markets. So I love to hear his thoughts on what's going on in crypto, but also what's going on with the US dollar, because that has a big impact on what's going on with crypto, because in some ways it's competition to people putting their money into, say, Bitcoin. So when the dollar is getting stronger, it sucks a lot of money away from crypto and goes into the US dollar. But as that flips around, sometimes then some of that money comes into alternatives like Bitcoin and other things. So we just saw the dollar going up to what, 105 on the index, and then it's dropping. And so when this reverses and goes the other way, a lot of people expect some of that money will go to other places, and probably or possibly some of that back into the crypto markets.
Yes, absolutely. I think the big fear at the moment is you're hearing it virtually every day. It's inflation, and crypto assets are a hedge against inflation. It's just at the moment we've also got fear in the market, which means that people are scared to take risky positions, and it may be that the equity markets. I remember you saying a few weeks back that when the equity markets go down, that could be a opportunity for people to sell out their positions there and then move into the crypto space, and that that's possible. That's an interesting scenario. The only thing is with when the market's in fear mode, they sell everything. They pretty much sell anything, and the one thing they're looking for is either cash or cash deposit. So they're looking to put their money where it's virtually 100% safe. Although I don't know what that means anymore. I don't think anything can be 100% safe. And so that's why with rising government bond yields, that's attracting money towards that sort of safe haven area, because government bond yields, especially American bonds, are considered to be pretty much the best. I mean, you can argue it in so many different ways as to how much debt the American system has got and whether it is safe or not. But let's just say that from the point of liquidity, it's considered one of the best in the world, if not the. And so as yields rise, it just makes that more attractive. It's sort of bringing money in. And when rates are expected to go up as well, that attractiveness goes up. So it's really what we're looking at is we're analyzing the market's sort of propensity to want to take risk. And if something's showing a lot of profits, as Bitcoin was very recently when it was trading up to $69,000, when people start to get scared, they cash in on their profits very quickly, and so risk on trades will go back down. So it's just a question of how far this will go before it then turns around. I think I mentioned it was either just before we went on air last week or when we were on air. I can't remember which it was now, but if we remember back to late 2017, early 2018, I think it was, when Bitcoin was trading at $20,000, and that was considered a really high, overbought, crazy level, which, to be fair, at that point, at that cycle, it was. And then from there, I think it crashed to something like $4,000, and everybody said it was over. And so here we are trading around $30,000, and there's people talking about the end of Bitcoin, which is, it's like, how can that be? It's so that's telling you the sentiment is out of whack. I mean, if we were much, much lower, maybe, but we're still way above those highs from back then. And the space is still gaining traction, So I think it's a very interesting market. We just need to see where this low, the low is. Like there's a low, whether it's the low remains to be seen. But we have an expression in the currency market, or when I was in the currency markets, in the trading markets, and when we like something, we say we're going to load the boat. And I've been waiting since we've been on the show to say, come on, let's load the boat now. This looks great. And I will use that phrase at some point when I really think it's time to load the boat. There are levels.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, I mean, there's levels where I like, okay, that's on a dive, and we could pick it up there, and this is holding, and let's just see. But I'm cautious by nature, and also especially when I'm talking on a public forum like this. I try to be more cautious because I know, people are investing and things like that, even though they should do their own homework. That would be my biggest takeaway. It's like listen to people if you want, but it's always your decision. So if you make money, you made the money. If you lose money, you lost the money. It's taking responsibility for your own actions is very important. Very important
for people who never take responsibility for their own actions. The only guarantee I can make is they'll never be rich.
Yeah,
because you don't learn any lessons when you then just project the blame for all your wrong decisions on other people. All of us make wrong decisions. I've made lots of them. I grew up poor, And so worked up in poor, I'd say the upper part of the lower class or the lower part of the middle class, and fluctuating between those zones in my childhood. And so is what's interesting though is I've seen with kind of the middle class or that area where certain narratives hit, right? So it seemed like part of what accentuated the pump back in 2017 around the holidays is in the US, in Canada, and other places. That's a time when people get together for holidays. People are like, oh my gosh, I've made so much money in Bitcoin. And so they would then, their family's like, oh, I'm going to get into Bitcoin. And so it seemed like part of the reason that that steep curve happened is people chase things that are moving and they run out of things that are declining, even though if you just do the opposite, it usually works much better for you. So right now it's a little bit frustrating in this down market. By frustrating, it's just because I've got a lot of capital deployed. It's actually an amazing time in the market because prices are so cheap. Depending on the chart, some things are like 80% off, some things are 95% off. And that is a much more interesting time than when things are up 50x. Because when things are up 50x or 20x, that should be a scary time. And it's a scary time to be thinking about buying and a fantastic time to be thinking about selling. So right now is a scary time to be thinking about selling, or it should be a very scary time thinking about selling things, and a very good time to be looking at what might do really well that can do like that'll be around for a while, that when things correct can do exceptionally well. And this is why we've refocused the channel on a lot of interviews on bringing projects back on, or even projects we haven't had on, and so that you get a chance to hear from the founders and see what you think, because a lot of this is just making educated guesses and then diversifying, because you never know. It might be a fantastic project and then something could come in, some unexpected, and sink the project. And so we saw that happen with Terra Luna, and that it sank the project completely in a record time, because we are in a high risk zone, and that there's always that chance of happening on any one of the ones. Some founder or even some mid-level management could get access to the private keys, take all the funds, disappear to Tahiti or wherever. Project completely fails. So just know the risks. We put on our big boy pants and big girl pants and we come into this market. Why? Because the potential returns here are unlike anything else. I do think it'll create more billionaires than any technology in history. And I do remember the early days of the internet when it was going that way. And I remember all the news anchors and stuff. And it's like, oh, internet's a fad. This thing is going to pass. Oh, it's just used, what they say, for porn and for crime is what they said. And isn't that what they say about crypto?
Exactly.
And this
Exactly right.
technology will envelop the world in many things. Can't solve everything, but it is definitely bringing more utility to the internet that was never there before. The engagement just airing today. When you're watching this, it'll be yesterday's video with DC's Palm NFT Studios partnered with DC Comics in order to make some Batman cows, as well as some other NFTs. And their whole goal with that project is create this massive user engagement experience with their audience in ways that only NFTs and what cryptocurrency can unlock can do. And they're really excited about that. And they're really just going to play around and experiment with how to create this fun community that people want to be a part of. And they'll have like giveaways for people that own some of their Batcal NFTs. They'll have other NFTs come out, and just a way to create engagement that was never there before. And so there's a lot of things that this technology is bringing to place that will completely change the world. And some of these companies, their token price will go absolutely nuts in the coming 20 years and create many billionaires. Which ones? Well, that's what we're all here trying to guess. If we rewound time to 40 years ago, it would be nice to say we'd invest in Microsoft, but then reset all of our knowledge about what happened. And you're trying to pick which one was Microsoft, because there were 500 companies trying to become what Microsoft did become. And so we're just, an investor essentially is a researcher that's looking for what makes sense, what team might be able to do what they're working on, Where does timing fit into it? How capitalized are they? So a lot of people come into the crypto space and they're like, yeah, I'm going to throw some money at this. Realize that when you're in this space, you're working on becoming an investor, and investors grow themselves and they grow their knowledge and understanding, learning how these different things interoperate between each other so that they can make better than average guesses. Why I like investing over gambling. Gambling is literally just going and pulling a lever, or these days pushing a button, and you're just hoping the odds work out in your favor, even though on average they don't. What I like about investing is that you can do strategic analysis and find projects that have better teams, that have better narrative, so that even though there is that risk that can go away, on average, if you diversify across lots of projects that have great narratives and great teams, your chances of winning go way, way up. That's why I love this space. I absolutely love it.
I mean, one of the things you were saying about contrary opinion theory, which is something we've mentioned a couple of times on the show, is the most consistently used form of analysis, if you like, by the top investors. It's they will always all say that in whatever form. So it might be that they're investing or trading, they're bullish when everyone else is bearish and vice versa. But it doesn't really matter what form of analysis they're using. They're all contrary. So they're all looking to buy when everybody else is selling with whatever tools they're using. And it's interesting that that's one of the most consistent things about the markets. I mean, how you measure those extreme points. So, and it does feel so strange and it's so unnatural. And that's why you can't naturally just make money in the markets. Because if you think about it, why is it that the markets are so difficult over the long term to get right? Because, you mentioned gambling, and of course with gambling, you don't have an edge, you don't have an advantage. So the more money you pour into the system, the more you're going to lose. That's just maths. You might be lucky, but it doesn't work like that. There are professional gamblers, but they are putting the odds back into their favor with some other system. But when it comes to investing, the most consistent thing that all long-term investors will say, or even traders will say, that being contrary is what works over the long term. But it feels so unnatural until it becomes the opposite of that. It becomes natural. So you already speak like that when you say, when things are going down, you're looking for opportunities, and when they're going up, you're reversing. So you're doing that already. But it's not, as we're saying, it's not easy. It's not easy even for people who've been in the markets a very long time. It's still hard to do that sometimes. And the reason why it's hard is because it always can feel a bit different this time. So it might be, well, hang on, is it really going to work this way this time? And
right.
and you're going, is this the one time it doesn't work this way? And am I wrong? And of course you could be, but it's consistently right. So we're trying to find that extreme. And in terms of, I've got the chart up here of Bitcoin, so and we can have a look. So we've come back to this long-term trend line here, and so this is a long-term trend line that I've got in, and the market's kind of stopped. It spiked below it, and it's rallied back up, and it's just sort of sitting on this 28,547 level, which is so interesting because that was the low from before. So it's intriguing as to why it keeps bouncing on this level, and it's just holding above it. Now, this again is not enough for me to say that the markets have reversed. It's done its first phase, which I think we talked about last week, which is it spiked down, and that's a panic. So I know it sounds a bit mean to say it, but we want to see a panic because that indicates the end of a trend. But the second phase is that it needs to start trending up, and it hasn't done that yet. And this is the bit I'm a bit concerned about. You can get like a move up and then it comes back down again, starts to trade lower. I'm going to show you a chart of something that's completely unrelated, but it's from chart point of view, it actually looks very similar. And this is the chart of the Chinese stock market. So I was very bearish looking for a breakdown, and we saw this breakdown and this spike and then a really strong move up, and then the market went sideways, and I was like, okay, this is good. If it can get through this resistance, then we've seen a base and it's ready to go. But instead it just went sideways for a bit, and it's now drifted down, and it looks actually like it's going to go back to this low and potentially lower. So this is what I'm slightly concerned about. I need to see more evidence before we can call the low and start loading the boat, as I was saying before. But it's hit some really good levels that I can understand why the short-term market might have jumped in to look for short-term gains. So I hope to see it break this level here at 31,530. So that's the high of this range here. That would look good. It would look like a basing pattern, a double bottom pattern, if it can do that. But it hasn't so far. The dollar's weakened off, yields have come off a bit, and it's still going sideways. So the market is not quite convinced yet. So we're kind of in this sort of holding pattern, I think, for now.
Yeah, it's a rough time, and I was looking for a tweet that I had to forward out before, and it's just so perfect because I imagine it felt like that to this guy, much like it does today. And it was something to the effect of, oh, I'm so frustrated with Bitcoin. I'm tired of waiting, and it just keeps not performing. And I'm just cashing out all my Bitcoin at 322 because I'm sick of waiting for it to go up, and it's just never got a future.
Oh, really?
$3.22 or whatever the price was. I was looking for the tweet so I could find it.
Wow.
Clearly this is back in like 2010, 2011 timeframe.
Wow.
What I love about the crypto market is just look over 4 years what it does, like much less over 8 or 12 years. So that's why I tell people, if you're serious about life-changing wealth through this, commit to yourself to at least 4 years in this, because that's where the gains really come in. It's really hard to tell month to month or even quarter to quarter where it's going to be. Even in the crypto winter, we had this really weird rise in the middle of the crypto winter where Bitcoin went all the way down to $3,200, and then it went up to $14,000 before then coming back down to $3,800. And it was like, what the heck is it doing? It's really hard to tell month to month or quarter to quarter. And if you're expecting yourself to be able to tell, well, know that some of the best experts in the world didn't see any of that coming. Yep, that illustrates it right there. You can see the left where it went down, more to the left of it. Yeah, so there we see it hit 3,200 right around early 2019, late 2018. Then it went all the way up to 14,000, the middle of the bear market. And then it came back down to touching 3,800, and then it was off to the races. And what that big rises was in the middle of the bear market was like, there were some things that drove that were much easier to see after the fact what was driving it than during it, because it was catching us all off guard. Like, why is it going up so fast? So we're in the middle of what should be a bull market. We had the first leg of it, which was in March of last year. Now, some people are saying October, November was the second leg of it. I personally don't believe the bull market is over, and maybe I'm wrong on this, and I'm prepared to be wrong on it. I don't have a magic crystal ball, but what we didn't get is, if the bull market is over for, let's say, the next 2.5 years, then really that means Bitcoin only went 3.5x from its previous highs this bull run, and I just don't see that being the case. Now, what would catch the most amount of people off is that everyone starts thinking bear market, bear market, bear market, and it goes completely bullish and tears up, goes up like crazy, which a lot of people are expecting the bear market will then enter very delayed, because they're like, oh, well, this is just a relief rally. This is just this. And then all of a sudden, as it goes parabolic, they throw their money in, which makes it go even more parabolic. And then what happens after it goes parabolic? It crashes. So that would actually throw a lot of people off, and I don't know if it'll play out that way. It'll be really interesting to watch how this does play out. What I did is committed myself to the longer term, and I remember being in the middle of the bear market, and it was boring as hell. And the truth is, even mini bear markets get boring. Why? Because every day prices are down, and unfortunately, we don't have billions of dollars to continue deploying. So a lot of times you deploy a bunch of your capital, and then prices get even more cheaper, and you're like, oh, I wish I had more liquidity to put in, and you don't. You do have more liquidity after 4 years if you've made some good decisions, but even then, you don't have unlimited capital. So we're in one of those periods where it's down. Sentiment is very, very bearish. A lot of people are like, oh, the fear and greed index, there's a lot of fear. This is a fantastic time to be here. But that doesn't mean it's easy to be here, especially if you were here and you can look back as human beings. We say, I wish I could have sold at this point because then I would have so much more capital. And that's part of being human. We do that to ourselves. It's not helpful, yet we often do it anyways, right? And what is fun though is when it does turn around down the road and you almost forget how hard these times were to hang in there. And only those that are patient and let it play out get to see those beautiful times.
Absolutely. So, should we look at some of the viewer picks?
Yeah, let's jump over to, KardiaChain was one of our viewer picks.
Yeah. So, let's get that on the system. So that's the first one we have here. I haven't looked at the others, so I've just looked at this one. Now, the short-term price action is actually following very much what Bitcoin has done. So if we look at the Bitcoin chart, you can see it's sort of gone down and gone sideways, and it's just waiting to either continue this downward trend or reverse. So we're at a crossroads. There's no doubt about that. Similar situation with this. It's gone down. It's had its sharp fall. It's found some support down here, and it's just edging sideways. Now, that is not enough to convince me that there's a low in the low, because that could easily just start to sag. And then if it does, I would be very worried that this 13.013 level will get taken out and it'll extend the downside. On the upside of this chart, there is a lot of good support, a little bit lower. So there's support at 0.10, and if we go back a bit further, there's support all the way down here. Now, I know in percentage terms that's some big moves, but if I was investing long term in this, I would be braced for moves like that, because it doesn't look like this is quite over yet. So I would be waiting on this. So I wouldn't necessarily want to buy it as yet. But what would convince me that the trend would have turned? So I have to look at, if my core view is it goes down, but then I have to work out, well, what's my view if I'm wrong? So if I'm wrong and it starts to go up, where do I start, thinking that I should be investing in it? And that could be, the first step would be a reversal pattern. So we haven't got one yet. And a reversal pattern is really just a base where the market is consolidating and going sideways, and then has an impulsive, a very sharp move to the upside that sort of kicks the trend off. So in the absence of seeing something like that, a very simple thing is using a trend line. So this is the main downward trend line from this peak, which has been running since November, late November. So if it can get through there, then that's the first good bullish sign that things are turning around. So I mean, it was in a really nice range up here, and it held support really well for a while, so it's a shame that it's gone into this corrective trend. But on the plus side, look at the overall trend. It's been really bullish. So it's only correcting from here, and therefore I think there will be a good buying opportunity coming in on this. But it just doesn't look like we're quite there yet.
Yeah, this one's interesting. I'm going to share my screen here. This is KardiaChain's website, and we've actually had a request to look at this a couple times. I'm starting to get really interested at this price that it's at. It's down 90% from its highs, which were right around 15 cents. Now, why I'm interested is because it's starting to get some use. Thetan Arena is built on top of it. I don't know. This game, Mytheria, looks interesting. My DeFi pet. DeFinity. I don't know how to say that, but it kind of summarizes here. KardiaChain can do over 10,000 transactions per second, transaction finality in under 5 seconds. Proof of stake, the transaction fees are 1/100th of a penny, and chain interoperability, yes. So great suggestion by one of our viewers. I put it in my notes to keep an eye on this. I might even buy a little bit, just a nibble, because sometimes I get barraged by so many things. I forget to come back and get it when it like has shown that it's bottomed out or it's taking off, and I just miss that entry point. So sometimes when I like something enough and it's cheap enough, I just nibble a little bit in case I forget to come back and load up later.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's at that point for me. Market cap's at 56 million, fully diluted market cap at 80 million. Okay, for a third generation blockchain, that's a really attractive market cap price. So pretty happy with that. Yeah, great suggestion by one of our viewers. For me, I'm just going to nibble in it, and I'm going to not put a lot in it till I see we're at more of a bottom.
Great stuff. The next one, I believe, is Cardano.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's happened with that is we've still got this downward trend in effect, which is, it's been a bit frustrating because we had a few attempts to turn that around, but it's just pulled away from this main downward trend. So really, the big turn will come when this breaks. Now, we've seen phase one of a reversal, which is the spike. So we see how the price action just dropped into this level and then recovered and has gone sideways. But as I was saying earlier, things look very similar in the sense that this is not quite enough for a longer term play to be established. So I'd like to see it get through 0.61, 61 cents. If it can get through there, it will make, I can see that price action would be a double bottom, a short-term double bottom. So that'd be enough to maybe take it back to this 90 cents area. But whether it'd be enough to take it through in this trend line, I don't know. So what we're seeing is we've got this support here, which support now resistance. We've got the trend line coming in. So it may be that this works its way sideways, and then by the time it breaks out, it might be where it crosses. So we shall see. But for the moment, again, I'm going to say it's a wait. Now, where it bounced from was a interesting breakout point, which I think we may have mentioned on the show, but I can't remember. It looks very similar to another chart that we were looking at where it bounced from an acceleration point in the upward trend. And so you can see where it stopped is a really good support point. And if that happens to break, where I think a short-term level would be at 18 cents. So if it gets down to 18 cents, I think it should have a reaction. Again, whether it's the low, I'm not sure. But there's so much good support down there. I could understand why people might step in at that point. So for me, I'm still waiting for evidence of either a continuation of trend that makes it cheaper and gives some longer-term buy levels, or reverses out with the rest of the market. I would expect the rest of the market to be reversing in synchronicity with this. So for the moment, I have to say it's a wait.
Yeah. Like, whoever thought it'd get down to like 51 cents again for Cardano? Great price. Might go even lower though. So this one for me is just a wait and see kind of how it plays out. I still have a lot of Cardano. I don't have near as much as I did have. I've sold some of my Cardano off. Lucky enough, I sold some of it at $3, but sold some at other prices, mostly not as a take profit so much as Cardano was still relatively up versus other things that were way down. So it was just a way to accumulate more of some other projects that I like that were way down, because I do love Cardano and where it's going. And I do think it's one of the blockchains that'll be around in 20 years from now. Let's take a look at COTI. Speaking of Cardano, because COTI's building DGED, which we saw the problems of an under collateralized stablecoin called UST by Luna, and the collapse of not only UST but also Luna. With that, Cardano is building DJED, which is supposed to be an over collateralized stablecoin. So it's a very interesting experiment, especially in just having seen Luna crash and flame out so badly. A lot of people are hesitant and a little bit scared, even though DJED is being built a different way. It is, once again, a pegged stable coin. They did go a very different route, and so that it's an over collateralized stable coin. So does that make it more stable? It should, but whether it will or not is the bigger question, right? Just because it should doesn't mean it will hold, say it goes through some big attack. So I'm really curious to learn even more about DJED and learn how what their plans are, or what mechanisms they put in place so that the same thing can't happen that broke UST. So I do like the team behind COTI a lot, and yeah, it would be really great to see a decentralized stablecoin that could hold its peg and be around for the long term.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
COTI is building that, so their COTI token is separate from this.
right, I see. Yeah. So this is I mean, it's at an amazing level here because look at this resistance, support, and then it's hit support bang on again. So this is a really huge area for it. And compared to some of the other charts, this is actually at least trying to go up. So you see how this is rising, these lows are rising. And that's what we'd like to see as a base. And like you're saying, there's a bit of fear in the market, which is good because it means that the market's potentially not overextended in this. Now, the only thing that's holding me back about saying buy is the broader picture, because I'm still concerned about the macro situation, and I think we need to be a bit more cautious. But if I was in a risky mood, I'd say buy it with a stop below this really good support, because if I'm wrong, this is my downside. So I know that a break of sort of 8 cents, just below, well, 9 cents pretty much, if it breaks below there, then I'm wrong and I'd have to get out. So I'd have a stop loss, but I wouldn't. This is something that I'd have to watch sort of on a day-to-day basis, because it's in a very tricky crossroads here. It does need to move up, and if it doesn't move up quickly, then the risk will start to turn down again. So, that's why I like it. I mean, I like it on this support level because it's so good. Resistance, support, and support is right here, and it's very, very clear. But that can work two ways, you see. If it breaks that support level, then it can sort of hit an air pocket and drop very aggressively to the next level, and there wouldn't be much below there to stop it. So that's why I think you've got to be careful if it does break that, and why you've got to either have stops in or a strategy to parachute out if it starts to go wrong.
Yeah. Great suggestion by our viewers. COTI, you can see a lot of it took a big tank as Luna and UST got hit pretty hard, and they went down a lot. And so we're hitting some resistance, and sometimes this makes for a good entry area. But like Paul said, there's still some downside risk if it breaks through that support. It might travel down quite a bit. So I'm cautiously going to keep an eye on COTI. I did have a lot a while ago, and I cashed out on my COTI while it did really, really well. And I rolled that into other things. So I've always liked this project. I didn't sell it because I don't believe in the project. It's just sell when you're way, way up on positions, right? And so I'm just going to wait. And if it breaks down significantly below there, that's when I'll reload back up. Because when I was reloading into this the first time, it was like 1.6 cents and stuff. And so that's when there was a bunch of fear in the market. And I thought, COTI, it's a really good long-term project. And the price was really savage back then. And so I loaded up a whole bunch and did well in waves. It first took this big step up that we're seeing just above us. Let me just change the frame. It did this big step up, and I came up some, and then it retraced down, and then it really took off after that in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, when you mention, obviously you mentioned Luna and the stablecoin issue. How I mean, what happens now, basically? Because Luna isn't at zero, but it's obviously still sort of trading. But is it there or isn't it? So we seem to be in this no man's land.
So they're trying to come up with some ideas of how to keep going with it, right? Because they still have some funds in their treasury, from my understanding. And so they, they're at a point where people have these tokens. They can try to make something else happen and just change so that your tokens have value. So at this point, it's not clear whether the tokens will have value, which is why they still have some value, is because you're kind of gambling that and I guess they're going to do an airdrop based on people that had it loaned tokens at a certain snapshot, as well as who has them now. And they're kind of talking about breaking it down by that. So
Oh right, okay,
how
interesting.
it
So
comes
they're trying to
together.
save it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like stocks where like when the company tanks, it goes away. Like I've seen I remember one project where like the founder got like arrested and stuff, and still like their token went from like $3 down to 3 cents, but they were still trading at 3 cents. And I was like, well, that's crazy.
Mm.
Okay. Well, for all intents and purposes, I think this project's dead, but like, they were still trading at 3 cents. So it's just the risk that maybe the CMO or somebody else steps up and runs the project and continues with the idea, I think is what that was.
Right, right. Interesting, interesting. Okay, so I think that is it ICP the next one?
Yeah.
ICP. Right. So what does that stand for? Internet is that
Internet Computer.
right? I'll try this one. Okay. So we're
That's it.
seeing yeah, yeah. You see, look at this is the fascinating thing I think about technical analysis. You've got all these different projects, different people working on them in some ways different spaces, different use cases, and yet the technicals all looks very similar. And how can that be? It's just fascinating that you can have such similar setups. I mean, it's virtually the same as the last two, except that this looks a little bit less bullish than the previous chart, and looks set to potentially make further lows. So it's put a spike in, which is a good sign, but that's what everything's done, and we're still kind of waiting for a reversal. So again, I'd have to say wait, because look at this trend. This trend is still down, and
Yeah.
it has accelerated here. So it could potentially, take this out and keep going down. Now, that's why we look for what's called reversal patterns, because for me, it stops me getting too excited about something before people like you who know what's going on jump in. So I'd have to wait. I'd have to say wait here. But I mean, if we look at where it's traded from, oh my god, I can't like $560. I thought that was a misprint. So
I know.
it's getting cheap, and if it's but will it get cheaper? That's the question. And so I'd have to know more about the project before I could get in. So it's a wait for me, but
I
what
remember when
did
this
you?
one came out and like everybody was talking about it. Yeah, when it was like 400, it was actually above $500, and it was squarely in focus. Everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, this is the biggest thing!" And I'm like, "Okay, so some project I hadn't heard of prior to 2 weeks ago, and their market cap at the time was just ridiculous. And even at the price that has decreased to, look at this market cap, still $1.8 billion.
Wow.
And
Okay.
okay, so you'll like the name of this, by the way. It's DeFinity, but spelled DFINITY.org.
Right.
So, kudos to them for recognizing a good name and then trying to copy it. Um, but so is this a good project? Well, supposedly, and it was in all the hype, and I was just like, well, I don't chase the boats that I missed. And so I'm like, could go up from here, but I doubt it, because it's like I all of a sudden went to way high on coin market cap and everything. And I was like, oh. So what's happened is a lot of these projects, they squeeze their initial token supply really, really small so that token price can hit a really high price. And if you buy it on the market, what often happens, you get slaughtered, is a lot of the tokens then start vesting. And so a lot of the pre-sale investors, and usually the project will sell. I see this happen a lot where they sell like 15% to pre-sale investors. They'll do a public sell at like 1% of their total tokens. So that might only be 16% of their tokens. Those pre-sale investors might have some lockups. The public sale often gets most of theirs unlocked right away, or maybe half or only a third unlocked right away, but they get access to their tokens. So those public sales often make sense if you can get in, because you get a large amount of your tokens, and the token price probably went very high. If we Google, we say ICP ICO price, sometimes we can get exactly what that public sale price was. I'm not seeing one that's one of the ones. ICO holder, this might tell us what their ICO price was, which is really what I'm trying to find. What was their initial DEX offering price at? I didn't see it on this so far yet either. ICO drops will usually tell us. Oh, I don't want to see their video. Huh. Okay, so we don't know what their price was for their IDO, but often it'll go up like crazy, and then it will like then come down as those tokens vest. And you don't want to be one buying them on the resale market when all that hype is going on, because then, I mean, can you imagine if you bought this at $500? I mean, you've just gotten absolutely wrecked. It's now trading at under $10. And so is now a good price? Not yet. Not yet. It's continuing. Only half their tokens are in circulation. And probably a lot of what's come into circulation is tokens usually hold back or projects hold like 30% of their tokens, which vest to themselves over time. And they just sell those on the market because that's additional fundraising, which I don't hold it against them for doing, but I don't want to be holding the token while they're then just dumping a lot of their tokens on the market as soon as they get unlocked. So that's what sometimes savages this price. And sometimes people blame it on pre-sale investors. And some of that is pre-sale investors. And some of that is usually some kind of marketing fund or whatever. I'd have to see what their exact tokenomics are. And as they get those tokens, they sell them and puts more funds into development. And so it often savages the token price for a while. And then it bottoms out. And then sometimes if the project does well, it goes crazy. And so what we're looking for is a good entry point for when that happens. Might be now, but I'm patient. I'm willing to just wait on this. There's so many great deals. I want to see which ones get even juicier. So I do have some capital on the side, not as much as I wish I had. And so when I see something that's like too good to pass up, that's what I'm waiting that for. I am going to put a little bit in KardiaChain because I've been waiting for an entry point. I want some exposure to it. And I'm worried that I'll miss it. I do like blockchain gaming a lot, and they're one of the third generation blockchains that is developed specifically for gaming. So I want some exposure to it. All right.
Cool. Okay. I think this is the last one, unless I'm mistaken. And it's COPI. So that was which one is it here? I think we looked at it last week as well. Is it
Cornucopias? Yep.
Yeah. So it is that. Let's just check. We got an up-to-date price because yes, so we have got an up-to-date price. So I think this is I think what I would have said about this before, and what I still have to say is it's still in a range. We look at the broad market tops and bottoms, and it's in virtually in the middle of that. So it's kind of flip a coin territory as to whether it's going to go up or down. We need to see it break something significant to start a new trend. This resistance up here at 5 cents, just over 5 cents, would be the sign that it's turning. And then if it can get through 7 cents, then it's into new highs. And I don't mind buying something that's been compressed like this, where if it moves into new highs, because I'm looking for a trending signal. And at the moment, there isn't a trending signal here. It's just going sideways. So I need to see a high break. And if this is going to be a good long-term investment, then it needs, if it's going to go to $1 or $2, it's got to get through this high first. So that's why initial highs are often resisted by, investors, because they think, oh no, should have bought it back here. But it depends on how the market is trading in terms of, is it trending? Has it broken out of a consolidation? And that's, with something like this, I'd have to wait for it to do that in the absence of knowing about the actual technology and the potential long-term investment opportunity. So it's still in a range. I'd still have to wait, unfortunately. That's, I think, pretty much I've said everything's a wait right now. So I guarantee that there will be a time when I say everything's a buy. Actually, I possibly can't guarantee that, because there might be the odd coin that is still resisting the trend. But there will be a time when the majority of what we say is a buy, because the market circumstances, the broader macro picture will look different and much more bullish. So, yeah, for the moment, it's a bit cautious, but I'm sure that it in a few weeks, hopefully, maybe a few months, we will see completely the opposite situation.
Yeah, this one's been very different from the rest of the market, right? I mean, relatively, it's way up. And what's interesting is it's going through its token investing that we talked about that often savages the price of a lot of tokens. So I was trying to search up and find their token vesting schedule, and I couldn't find that. But what I did find is this. So token allocation, private sale 9%, public sale 4.3%. Team advisors got 24%. Play to earn 30.7% of the tokens are set aside for that. That's cool. Staking and farming rewards, which are happening now, and they do have a really good farming staking and program. So a lot of people are locking up their tokens to earn those staking rewards, and that's helped keep some off the market. But there's a lot of projects that have token vesting schedules like this, and we have not seen cornucopias get savaged to the same extent that we've seen a lot of other projects. So what that really means is, although there's selling pressure, the buy pressure is close to equal to what the selling pressure is, which isn't frequent that it happens. That tells you that they've done a good job building a community that's engaged. In fact, catch the interview I just recorded this morning with the co-founders of Cornucopias. It'll air later this week, probably on Saturday. And yeah, this is an interesting one to watch, to kind of figure out like what is going on with them, because why does this look different? Why is it holding up better than most things hold up? That this is really rare. So it was as high after they launched. It went all the way up to 7.5, 8 cents. And then it's been hovering within this zone, even though there are pre-sale token vestings going on still. This is remarkable.
That's really interesting information.
Their vesting schedule, right? And so they're building a AAA level game on the Cardano blockchain, but then also they'll be building their own layer 2 solution, which really they'll be running it on. And so, yeah, they've got interesting, and their game is different than a lot of other games out there. There's only one that's kind of in the same realm that I would say would be My Neighbor Alice. Yeah, I'm looking forward to what they're doing here in their kind of game. And I love metaverse games that involve like economics and trading. And so I'm looking forward to see how this comes together. Catch that interview on Saturday. It was fascinating.
Brilliant.
And yeah, great.
Sounds really exciting, this one. I definitely have to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, there's their website, and it gives you a kind of feel for the game. And they do have really good video. They have some good videos that people can see. They have a virtual land sale coming up. And so there's a lot of good information on it right from the website, which is Cornucopias.io. Easy way to go to is go to CoinGecko, punch in COPI, COPI, brings it to it. And then from here, you can link to their website if you don't know how to spell Cornucopias, because it's a long one, Cornucopias.io. You just click to it there, and then you can get to their Twitter, their Discord, all their other stuff right from there. So yeah, at this point, I have a bunch. I'm not buying at this price. I like buying at lows, and they're not at lows. As to whether I think it'll do tremendous from here, I have no idea where this is going to go in the next 4 months. Do I think it's going to do really well in the coming year and a half, 2 years? Probably much higher than this. So what I'm holding out for is if, like, I don't know, maybe like if it goes down more, and I have some already, so I'm happy with what I have. Am I adding more in? No, I'll just do that at lows that I'm like, this is too good to pass up. I'm going to buy a bunch more.
Fantastic.
Cool. Well, thank you, Paul. Fun update. I know I loved it. I bet our audience did as well.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We appreciate, yeah, you sticking around. I think you'll find it beneficial. I know these times are rough. They're boring at times. And that's why I made that statement, buy when it's boring, right? It really does work out pretty well if you'll hold for long term. If you use money you can't afford to or you can afford to lose. So never put like your rent money or your mortgage money into crypto. It puts you in too much of a squeeze where you can't afford to be patient, because you're seeing right now, we have to be patient a lot longer than what we were hoping for, and that sucks. Secondly, always make your own decisions. I talk about what I like here. I try to share with you why I like them, but why I like them and if they're good for my portfolio isn't necessarily doesn't mean that you should like them or they're good for your portfolio. Not always right. Like some projects that I've liked totally went down in flames. Omni went down in flames. I even covered another one called Envoy, but I tried to get them on to bring them on to the show, and they wouldn't connect well. And I was like, gosh, why is it so hard to connect? And they just went down in flames. I don't even know why they closed their doors. It's way too early. Why they did is really suspicious. And that just happens. We're in a growing space. These kind of projects fail. We'll see more failures over the coming years. And this is why I diversify. Because though actually my first year, I actually invested in a lot more companies that failed than I do now, even with as diversified as I am, because I do look for solid teams. I look for longer term commitment. And so that there's just, I guess I don't run into as many projects that are just going to flame out or scam out as I did my first 6 months or 9 months in the crypto space. But still, it's a high risk, high reward area, and patience pays off. So if you haven't already, make a 4-year commitment to be here 4 years from now. And my guess is if you continue to learn on a daily basis, grow your understanding, do your own research, buy when it's really, really boring and when everybody is running, but yet you can tell a project is solid and likely to stick around, I think you'll do really well over time. Thanks so much for joining us. Remember, no rain, no gain. I'm going to play our Rainmaker video for all of you.
Came into the space, chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, shit, right before you could. Was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss. Cause I always made the time in mind. I take the one out, cause I'm patient like that. And I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't leave with my heart. The principles are simple, to leave in a lot. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, got parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, to study and to know that nothing comes easy, but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this wrong, cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing, and when it's slow will be the target. Naysayers come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. Strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time, the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort, cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go with the hate, say the haters be crapping. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, but time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough, and that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.